happen. We have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And it's National Youth HIV/AIDS Awareness Day today as we're taping.
Maybe not when you're seeing us, but we're celebrating all week. Pete Buttigieg's version of religion has drawn a response from Karen Pence. I can't wait to hear about that. You know that, I don't.
Oh. And Attorney General William Barr, you probably saw him evading responsibility for trying to kill the Affordable Care Act.
And everything else in his purview.
But he did respond to the LGBT group at the Justice Department, which was complaining about working conditions.
And our hero of the week, Taylor Swift, has boosted the campaign to stop anti-LGBT legislation in her home state of Tennessee.
And another of our heroes, Chelsea Manning, was released from solitary confinement but is still in jail.
Mormons and Catholics have taken baby steps I'm sorry, I lost my place.
Well, to sort
From all-out homophobia.
Yes.
Yeah, well, the baby steps.
Baby steps, really baby steps. We'll discuss. There were global protests against Brunei's new law mandating death by stoning for homosexuality and adultery.
We will review What the Constitution Means to Me on Broadway.
And Tales of the City, Ormsted Maupin book, TV series, is being revived on Netflix in time for Pride Month.
And there's a new movie that is a lesbian comedy about Emily Dickinson.
Oh, yes.
We'll talk about that.
That looks like fun if you can't wait till the end.
And get out a piece of paper and a pen because we have some dates to tell you about of things you want to pay attention to.
So Pete Buttigieg, he gave a speech at the Victory Fund, and it was, it's generated a lot of discussion among the LGBT community.
I think that's an understatement. It has swept the nation. It has been talked about as a speech so fundamentally important that it will be talked about for decades to come.
Let's go over some of the things he said. One of the things he said is, if being gay is a choice, it was made far above my pay grade. He said that's what he wishes the Mike Pences of the world would understand. If you got a problem with who I am, your problem is not with me. Your quarrel, sir, is with my creator. And he said his marriage brought him closer to God. This provoked a response from Karen Pence.
I can't wait to hear it.
Second Lady of the United States.
Who didn't show up for the meeting with the out gay Prime Minister of Ireland when he came to the Vice President's house.
Mike Pence brought his sister. Anyway, Karen Pence said in response, she was questioned about this, and she said, people shouldn't be attacked for what your religious beliefs are. This is the Trump-Pence administration, folks. Trump-Pence, the ones who said, I'm keeping all Muslims out of the country. Get it?
Well, if she doesn't believe people should be attacked for their religious beliefs, is that a statement in support of Buttigieg?
Or support of Muslims?
I think she totally misunderstands the whole construction of his speech.
Keep it up, Karen. You might get booted out of the Naval Observatory where the vice president lives. Now, Pete also said he didn't want to be gay. He said he came out publicly in 2015 while running for re-election, and he and Chasten got married. But he said if I could have taken a pill to not be gay, I wouldn't have even waited for a sip of water.
Yeah, but he's describing how he felt then. And he went on to say, thank God he didn't have the pill. Thank God he didn't have a knife to cut it out of him. He's very proud and happy to be gay.
I would say that he has the zeal of the converted.
Well, of course, we all do. None of us thought when we were age 1 that we were gay. It dawned on us eventually, at different times in different ways, but we all had to come to that realization. And that's one of the things about coming out and growing up in this world. And you and I are about to have a discussion about some of this, but in doing the education we've done with kids in school or youth serving professionals or whatever, what we've tried to explain to people is that you grow up in this world, certainly in past decades, assuming that you are heterosexual, that is what the world teaches you.
You're a normal person, so you're going to want to grow up and get married to someone of the other sex.
So to be LGBTQIATSNBGNC.
Let's just do the whole alphabet.
Well, occasionally we should. It comes as a surprise. It's not what you're expecting.
Or it feels, depending on when you grow up, it feels disturbing. Now, young people are. He's 37.
Yes.
Young people are coming out at younger and younger ages.
Of course.
I mean, when Ellen came out, we actually saw a change in when people were recognizing when they were gay, because there was so much publicity about that coming out on her television show.
Even so, it requires a moment of realization, of self-definition, whether that is good news or bad news or confusing news. It is something that straight people do not have the same experience of.
Now, you're the co-host of the Gay USA show. Maybe you know this, because I haven't picked this part up.
Okay.
Does he talk about having been in denial up until 2015, or what?
I think what he says, and I haven't listened to all his speeches or read everything he's read, but I think he says, for some period of time it didn't occur to him, and then for some period of time he was coming to a realization.
Did he date women?
But hopes that, look, I dated men, but not very deeply.
I didn't.
Still a gold star.
I didn't date women.
Ever? Never had a date with a girl?
No.
Never went to a prom with a girl? Never?
My first kiss at the University of Virginia I was cast in a show. Don't call this typecasting. It was called The Bore by Chekhov. His most successful play, by the way, a one-act comedy. Anyway, I had to kiss this woman in the show, and I had never kissed a girl before, or a boy, and the director said, I'm first year, and the director said, I went to all boys high school. The director said, what's going on with the kiss? She goes, I'm giving him my best kiss. I'm not getting anything back.
Andy, I don't know. This may be too much information.
Well, I'm just saying. So I'm talking about evolution. But I recognized before that I was gay, and I'd come out to my best friend and said I was gay. He came out to me first. In high school, I came out to him. So we knew what we were. We started going to gay bars right away. Just didn't get any kissing in.
Are you suggesting?
Not until I think
You're not suggesting
year.
You were doing other things.
No.
Yeah, the life and times of Ann and Andy.
All right.
Anyway,
well, this is all interesting to people because it's so public.
Yes, but I think he went through a very common evolution, which is assuming when you are very young that you are like everybody else, as they say, and you are straight, and you expect to grow up and marry a person of the opposite sex. I certainly was raised that way. I certainly also had inklings early on that I was attracted to girls, but I thought, it's not real. It will go away.
Yes.
Whatever.
But we're older.
Yes.
We're not going to say how much. But
a lot.
These people, young people, a person who's 37 now, they had a lot more information than we did.
But you assume that's universal, and that's just not true.
He's a Rhodes Scholar, for God's sakes. I'm just saying, he had a lot more information, and your desires, it's very hard.
People are in denial. People are raised in different cultures, in different pockets of the world.
Yeah, he was raised by college professors in Notre Dame.
Oh, please. Well, I mean, you're making all sorts of assumptions that just are not necessarily true.
Well, let's have him on, and we can get into it.
I would love to. Well, the point is that
welcome.
It is, and this is where Andy and I started this conversation the other day, is that there's still plenty of people who are closeted, plenty of people who are struggling at all ages. I think our viewers would endorse that fact, and can certainly tell us what they think about that. I meet people all the time who are still closeted who are my age.
Harris Wofford didn't come out until he was 90.
Exactly. So to
this was a senator from Pennsylvania.
To expect that because the world has changed, and has changed, you know, all the news commentators will say to you, this is the fastest societal change of any movement we've ever seen.
What do you mean? We don't even have civil rights in this country
This is
yet.
what they say on TV these days, because Pete Buttigieg is running for president.
That's what Mike Signorelli calls victory blindness.
Well, exactly. So the point is, it is still something that people have to do in personal isolation.
Right.
They do not grow up necessarily in a family that supports them. They do not have all the comprehensive information. They don't have the support that they need. Okay. And to think that it should have been easier for Pete or that he should have come out earlier, I think is just inappropriate.
I think he sort of had one of these best little boy in the world syndromes also, you know, the military, the this, you know, the
Absolutely.
upstanding, which is part of his appeal.
Yes.
You know, he knows how to make people like him.
And having done the education we've done in the schools, it was always my experience that talking to kids who were members of oppressed groups was easier than talking to kids at privileged, private schools. Because the private school kids are much more closed off and much more invested in their status in the system and much more scared about challenging that. Whereas people who have less are not as threatened by difference.
Tell that to Abel Cedeno.
Well, I'm going to tell it to our viewers and the headmistress at a private school who, after I did an AIDS education class with her faculty, which included discussion of my being a lesbian, led her to take me aside afterwards and call me a traitor to my class.
God.
And that's what those kids in private schools are facing.
Now, having said all this, of course, this is the Gay USA show. We do talk a lot about Pete's sexuality, but that's not what everybody else is really talking about. They're talking about his religion. And he called for the religious left to play more of a role in America. Mm-hmm. And he said
I think they'd love to.
He said that President Trump's actions, well, it's hard to believe they're the actions of someone who believes in God. He said it. He said Trump worships his own self. Whoa, this is hot. I mean,
it's fabulous.
He really knows how to skewer them.
Well, and it's fascinating because even though there's talk about, oh, he's too perfect, he's too good, and the country likes him because he's not a threatening gay, the fact that he's saying this stuff is pretty amazing.
Well, we do have some policy disagreements with him, but then his husband, Cheston, and they only met in 2015, I guess, he spoke at HRC in Houston, the Human Rights Campaign, and said that advocacy for marriage led in large part by HRC, which some of us, But then he said, he said, I could be the first man to pick out the White House china. And when he came out to his folks, he became homeless.
Yeah.
They threw him out.
Yep.
Or he felt he had to leave.
Right.
It was so bad he had to live in a car, had to live with friends, homeless. He's a teacher and he runs the diversity club.
He also talked about trans black women being murdered.
Oh, yes.
He talked about trans people being thrown out of the military. He talked about the bad Texas laws that are being voted on.
You can Google Cheston Buttigieg, if you can figure that out, and you can watch this speech online.
Or just go to hrc.org. I'm sure they have it posted. The other thing was that, Buttigieg did a lot of this religion talk, not only to the Victory Fund, but on Meet the Press with Chuck Todd. Well, then commentators are saying afterwards, and isn't it great that there he was on Meet the Press with Chuck Todd and his sexuality didn't even come up? Why do you think that is? It's because Chuck Todd is not comfortable talking about gay issues.
Oh, sure.
It has nothing to do with any reluctance by Pete to talk about it or any sense that we shouldn't be talking about it. Of course we should be talking about it.
Chuck Todd isn't even comfortable with his own hairline. Now, I don't usually make comments like that, but I get very distracted looking at this fringe being put. Rudy Giuliani used to do that too.
He's like a Roman emperor. That's what it looks like.
And we're sorry if you think we're looksist. Now, other candidates.
Or anything else, but really, Chuck Todd is far too conservative.
Now, there are 20 candidates. Please don't write us complaining about not us mentioning all of them and what they did this week.
People have been writing us to complain that we don't talk about Pete enough.
Right. Beto O'Rourke this week said Trump's immigration rhetoric is straight out of the Third Reich. Again, somebody who's not mincing words. And they go back and are you really comparing him to Hitler?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, my comparison is always, and remember, Hitler was elected.
That's true.
Yeah.
Actually, Beto was talking about all that. They had an election.
Yeah.
I have notes on some of the others mixed in here. Should we talk about Trump?
Sure.
Well, I mean,
Well, the headline this Friday, the trans-military ban goes into effect. And congratulations to The View for having 2 trans-military service members on their show this week and treating them very respectfully and supportively. And I thought that was terrific.
If you're in the military and you're already out, that's supposed to be okay. You're grandparented in, but you can't come out now if you are.
The staff member for a Republican member of Congress, Dusty Johnson, a Republican of South Dakota, the staff member, when asked about the trans-military ban going into effect, said, "No one cares."
No one cares? Meaning what?
Meaning, so they all get thrown out. Who cares? So none of them can serve. We don't care.
They are hateful people.
Well, he got some blowback on that, and he ended up having to apologize.
All right. So Representative Ilhan Omar from Minnesota, a Democrat, called Stephen Miller a white supremacist this week. You read about that. Representative Lee Zeldin on Long Island, a Republican, accused her of anti-Semitism.
Oh, please.
So gay activist Steve Goldstein, who we had on the show, said, Stephen Miller is the biggest embarrassment to the Jewish people since I played Little League Baseball.
Steve was always a good press person. He had a great way with words.
Let's talk about William Barr.
Okay.
Horrendous performances this week of evasion on everything. I mean, when they confronted him about appealing the Affordable Care Act, he said, well, if you think we're going to lose, why are you getting so upset?
I thought he was scarily smooth in his testimony.
Smooth?
Yes.
Oh, I thought he was very awkward. Anyway, he was also asked about hate crimes during his hearing. He said, I've seen no data there's been any increase in hate crimes under Trump. I mean, they've kind of been going up for a while, but, that's a lie.
That's what I mean by him being smooth. He's very, has no shame.
And so it's been horrible watching him all week, but we did learn, we told you about the fact that DOJ, Department of Justice, Pride, wrote to him about the horrendous conditions under Sessions and now him for LGBT employees, and he wrote them back. He signed an equal employment opportunity statement that includes gender identity and sexual orientation and addresses discrimination, retaliation, and harassment. Jeff Sessions would not issue such a statement.
Right.
Barr said that he was troubled by the reports of low morale among LGBTQ employees, and he wants an investigation.
He wants the FBI and the Bureau of Prisons to investigate.
Less good Ben Carson's response to all this at HUD. He will not issue an LGBT guidance on the website or to the employees, and they kept pressing him at the hearing. Well, why would you do that? You're not going to like what I would say.
Which means that he would issue a statement that said people's religious beliefs will be honored in all these cases. He
wants to roll back the interpretation to pre-Obama guidance, where we're not covered.
Yeah. On the other hand, Congress, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which represents 3 million businesses and is known as a fairly right-wing organization historically, wrote a letter to Congress supporting the Equality Act.
They had their second hearing on our bill before the Education Labor Subcommittee on Civil Rights and Human Services this week. By the way, Trump tried to do a campaign video and get it on YouTube.
Yes.
He got knocked off because he was using somebody else's music. Now, this happens to us from time to time. We're much more careful with music now.
Yeah.
But it happened to Trump. It automatically got his video knocked off the internet.
Charming. Also in Congress, they've been working on renewing the Violence Against Women Act, and one of the changes to it is to include sexual orientation and gender identity and expression in protected classes or groups. And the Republicans are not happy about this. No. So the NRA, of course, has come out strongly against the act because they want men who perpetrate domestic violence to still be able to have guns. And the Republicans are just really freaked out about the inclusion of LGBT people in the act. And so they put up quite a fight. And I don't know whether it will pass the Senate or whether Trump will sign it.
Well, it doesn't matter because we're going to war. Trump declared the Iranian Revolutionary Guards a terrorist group, and this could incite retaliation by Tehran against American troops and intelligence officers, and that's how you have war, which is what he wants because the other distractions aren't working the way he wants. My favorite story of the week, though, is when New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern got a call from Trump about the massacre in New Zealand, and he asked if there's anything he could do to help. And she said to him, provide sympathy and love for all Muslim communities. I don't think he followed through on that.
Well, it sounds to me like the theme so far of today's show is speaking truth to power.
Yeah.
And I love it when people find their voices.
Well, speaking of power, though, we told you about what happened in Wisconsin last week. They had an election on April 2nd, and they elected the right-winger to the Supreme Court to replace a progressive justice. So we're way behind there. Just 25% of people went to the polls in that election. By the way, our president, and the guy who won, Hagedorn, he compared homosexuality to bestiality and says his faith informs everything he does in the workplace. And his own litmus test when voting is opposition to abortion. He won praise from President Trump for his victory.
Very discouraging when you have a close election like
25%.
Yeah.
Folks, you got to vote every single opportunity. This is how you get power. We did it, and certainly people came out in 2018 for the midterms.
Yes.
But that was more of a national thing. In New York State, our state senator, Brett Holman, is trying to get Trump's tax returns, his New York State returns, and is really getting successful on this bill that requires the release to 3 congressional committees of New York State tax returns, which would include Trump. And
so we live in a state with a Democratic governor and a Democratic legislature, finally. So let's say they pass whatever Brad is suggesting about getting the tax returns, and say Trump doesn't want to have them release his tax returns. Where does that end up?
I think they try to go to court and stop it, just like they're going to try to go to court and stop it. Stop Maxine Waters from getting it.
Yeah, did you see her against Mnuchin?
Did. You can leave if you want to.
Are you telling me to leave?
You can leave if you want to.
Well, you have to bring down the gavel and the gravel and close the hearing. You can leave if you want to.
By the way,
I have an important meeting.
If the Republican Party wasn't bad enough, their Freedom Caucus is now warning the big drug companies not to cooperate with a congressional investigation of how they set prices. It's just too much. And by the
Trump's big thing was he was going to lower prices.
By the way, we're scared about a lot of things, but the success of this movie, Unplanned, an attack on Planned Parenthood, an anti-abortion drama based on, supposedly true events, it's apparently a big hit.
Yeah.
And the makers hope it's going to trigger the cultural moment that overturns Roe v. Wade. They complain that their advertising is not being accepted anywhere but Fox. But it is scary.
It is. They're good propagandists.
It's a very scary time.
All right, well, let's move to the states with our political news. In Massachusetts, Governor Charlie Baker, Republican, signed the ban on conversion therapy for minors.
I believe Colorado's Jared Polis is going to do the same.
He has it on his desk.
That would make them the 17th state to do it, plus the District of Columbia.
That is fast work.
Well, they say this is one of the issus that is separating the country now, conversion therapy.
We talked about Lori Lightfoot getting elected mayor of Chicago.
She's a lesbian.
Last week. She is a lesbian.
Open.
She is African American, and we talked about, her and Jenny Durkin in Seattle as the sitting mayor, and Lori and a few others, the new mayor of Madison, and then presumably Tampa, and what's the fourth one? Anyway, coming along, but we neglected to mention some, and the viewers were kind enough to point it out to us, if I can find it here.
Well, Jackie Biskupski
in Salt Lake City.
But she's not running for re-election this year.
But she's the sitting lesbian mayor of Salt Lake City, and we neglected to mention her.
Sorry.
And the first out lesbian black mayor was Denise Simmons of Cambridge, Mass. There is a lesbian mayor of Key West.
We've been electing
Lambertville, New Jersey, West Hollywood.
They've been electing out officials since the early 70s, starting in Michigan, actually.
Absolutely, but I just want to acknowledge that there are a lot that we neglected to mention last week in pushing that
They're very
in the current elections.
Very conscientious.
Well, I want to be accurate.
This one's a little complicated. California is advancing a bill that gives judges the ability to evaluate whether someone on the sex offense registry, if they should be on the sex registry, if a teen, 14 to 17, has sex with someone within 10 years. Now, here's the deal. Right now, the judge has no discretion if they had oral or anal sex, but the judge has discretion if they just had vaginal sex.
It's equalizing the ages eligible for the sex registry between straight and gay.
Doesn't get you off necessarily, and it's still a crime, but anyway.
Also in California, we told you that the legislature was considering a bill to to prohibit basically surgery on intersex babies until they were old enough to make a decision for themselves.
Yep.
Well, the sponsor of that bill has withdrawn it for the moment because the very powerful doctors' lobby doesn't like it. They want to be able to just consult with the parents and let the parents decide.
Right.
And because they think they're doing the child a favor by making an arbitrary determination of their gender.
As opposed to waiting until the person can make the decision for himself, herself, or their self.
And whether they want surgery at all, let alone what the doctors call corrective surgery.
Exactly.
So that legislation is on hold at the moment.
All right.
In Tennessee. Tennessee, we've been talking about a lot because they have a whole package of bills against us. In fact, it's called the Slate of Hate. And we've been following the progress of these bills. And someone has stepped in to help, and that is
a daughter of Tennessee,
Taylor Swift, who has donated $113,000 to the Tennessee Equality Project and written them a very nice note saying how much she admires their work, how much she wants to help. I just thought it was a very excellent thing for her to do.
Speaking of slate of hate, Tennessee and Louisiana are where we have these multiple burnings of black churches, domestic terrorism that I haven't heard the administration talk about yet.
Well, the other thing is that in Tennessee, we think we know now a white nationalist burned down a building at the Highlander Center, which is the legendary conference center where many heroes of the black civil rights movement trained, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, many others.
Oh, yes.
I was at a conference at the Highlander Center a few years ago that was an LGBT convening, a training of people to take leadership, and it was very moving to be at the Highlander Center. So this has not daunted them. They're not going out of business. It's just one of their buildings, and they'll rebuild. But it's just a reminder that along with these church burnings, hate is alive and well.
It is.
And you know, the Trump administration refuses to acknowledge that there is any danger from homegrown white nationalists and terrorists. They are cutting back on...
Stephen Miller is running immigration.
And they're cutting back on any funding for investigating any of this or combating it. When they're asked about it, no, that's not a problem. Here and there, occasionally, not a movement.
But that's the majority of the terrorist killings in America are by white terrorists.
Exactly. It is so scary to me what is happening to this country in a very short time under Trump. And
it's always been there under the...
yes.
Always been there. We did have a civil war, after all.
We did.
All right. In Idaho, a federal appeals court has granted the state's request to postpone gender confirmation surgery for an inmate named Audrey Edmo, a trans woman, who would have become the second incarcerated person in the country to get such surgery. Now it's up to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in May to decide this.
Meanwhile, Chelsea Manning, who has been incarcerated because she refused to testify to a grand jury about her, relationship with WikiLeaks and leaking documents or handing over documents.
Well, she's worried about a perjury trap there because she says, I've told you everything I have to say. You just want to trick me into saying something inconsistent and then lock me up again.
Yeah. So she had been kept in solitary confinement for a month, but she's now been moved into general population.
By the way, those bills are advancing in Tennessee.
They are.
One passed 69 to 25. Anti-trans public accommodations bill this week. All right, in Brooklyn, the DA there, Eric Gonzalez, wants to decriminalize prostitution. He told the Lambda Democrats,
the mayor's against it.
Club. It would not apply to pimps and sex traffickers, and he would also support legalizing sex work in general. Kamala Harris, by the way, to mention another presidential candidate, apparently also recently endorsed decriminalization.
Well, I don't know where this fits into decriminalization, but the city of Chicago is going to sue Jussie Smollett for refusing to pay court costs of $130,000. So they're just not letting him out from under. He is going to go back to Empire to appear on that show.
Better news from Atlanta. Well, the library there, the library system, pulled support for Drag Queen Story Hour, a very popular thing for
Fulton County,
kids.
Alpharetta Library.
So Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms had the event at City Hall.
And go ahead.
Well, Alabama, another good story, I guess.
Yeah.
The Cat and Bird Winery in Shelby, Alabama. First of all, they said, we won't host a same-sex wedding at our place. And they were shamed about it on social media.
Well, left out one step. Lesbian couple wanted to hold their wedding there. Yeah. They said, no, it's against our religious beliefs. But you come on by and enjoy some wine and join us for an evening, dinner or whatever. We would love to see you. It's this whole, we're not discriminating against gay people.
I'm not prejudiced.
It's just that the ceremony is against our religions.
I'm not prejudiced.
So then
they reversed course. They were shamed into it on social media, but they added, we still have our religious beliefs against same-sex marriage.
You can have your religious beliefs against same-sex marriage,
and but you drink too.
But you cannot. You cannot discriminate against people when you are a public accommodation. If you are going to advertise your wedding services, they have to be available to everyone who can legally marry.
Okay.
And that includes us. Okay. And that leads us to religion. In Utah, the Mormons have had a little change of heart because... Because... They had
a revelation.
A revelation from God.
Just like when they let black people become elders in the late 1970s.
Well, I guess they think God changed his mind.
Well, so what this amounts to in Utah is what?
Kids of same-sex parents can be baptized.
Yes.
Now, the idea that they wouldn't baptize kids of same-sex parents is so loathsome.
Oh, it used to, and also they said same-sex marriage no longer constitutes apostasy. It's just very, very bad. But it's not apostasy anymore.
It's a serious transgression, but we will not throw you out of the church. Thank you very much. And Google finally bowed to pressure and canceled its artificial intelligence ethics board because Kay Coles James of the Heritage Foundation was on it. That's what got people upset, so they just canceled the whole board. I guess there are no ethics.
Speaking of canceling things, the American Library Association has a list of the most banned or challenged books in the library system. 6 out of the 11 have LGBT content. The number 1 is a book called George, which is the story of a 10-year-old trans girl named Melissa, known to some as George, and it's a book for 8 to 12-year-olds. And John Oliver's Day in the Life of Marlon Bundo also is on that list about the gay bunny in the Karen Pence household.
Saw a very interesting local news report from Tulsa, Oklahoma. A trans woman who is a well-known opera baritone, Lucia Lucas, who has performed in Europe a lot, but she's American, is going to be performing, the first trans woman to take a lead role in an opera, and she'll be performing in Tulsa in Don Giovanni. And so that's getting local coverage there, and people seem happy to see her. I'm not quite sure what role or how, but she'll be performing.
Speaking of trans people or intersex people or people whose gender is not completely understood, we talked to you about last week about General Casimir Pulaski, the Revolutionary War hero in America who was Polish.
Said to have saved George Washington's life.
The pride of Polish American communities killed during the war. So Smithsonian Channel did this thing, was the general female? The general is. But one of the interesting developments is that, the Pulaski Day parade in New York for Polish Americans keeps LGBT groups out. They let them in once, keep them out now. But the president of the group said, I'd heard something about this before, but I'm a little shocked. But in this day and age, I don't think it will matter to most people. I really believe the majority won't care. And it doesn't take away from the fact that Pulaski was a Polish-American hero. So how about letting of course, I think the gay group of Polish immigrants has disbanded. Razem was the name of it, which is also the name of a party over there.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. And that brings us to another parade or march, the Reclaim Pride Queer Liberation March for June 30th.
Which we are a part of.
Yes, we are. We were endorsed this week by gay activists in Beijing and by the Nas Foundation in India. Now, we have talked about them to you for several years. They are a major HIV/AIDS foundation in India, a national foundation, and a few years ago...
17 years ago.
17? Was that when they started?
They worked for 17 years on getting rid of the sodomy laws there.
When we did AIDS education in the schools, it became very clear to us very quickly that you could not do AIDS education without destigmatizing homosexuality.
Sure.
It just was impossible.
Key.
And so we started doing both education on homosexuality and AIDS education as two separate things. And the Nas Foundation went to court to overturn the sodomy law in India because same-sex sex was illegal. And it took them many years. They finally got a good court decision overturning Section 377. And then that got reversed, and they lost on the second round. But they hung in there, and they went back to court, and they managed to overturn the defeat. And last year we had a huge celebration at the idea that India had finally decriminalized homosexuality. It was a really big deal. And now the people who did that have endorsed the Reclaim Pride March because they understand that this is a people's political march. It's not a Mardi Gras. It is a serious political, joyous, serious everything.
We're going to start out in the Village by Sheridan Square, near the Stonewall, right by the Stonewall, at about, we're going to gather around 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning and march up early.
We hope a little later, but we'll see.
Anyway.
So we got a great statement from Anjali Gopalan, who is the leader of NAS. Did we show that picture? There she is. And we also have a video that she did. You remember when It Gets Better was a thing and people were making It Gets Better videos around the world?
She did It Gets Better India.
Right. So Dan Savage invented those. So let's show you Anjali's It Gets Better video.
If you are sure about yourself and if you're committed to bringing about change and making a difference in the life of a individual, many individuals, or any life form, it's very possible. When I started working on the issue of Section 377 to decriminalize homosexuality, believe me, for the longest time, I thought I would never see any change happening. I didn't think I would see it during this lifetime for sure. This world is actually an incredible space, and all of us can do a little bit to bring about change and make sure that things happen which make many lives happier. I am so happy that It Gets Better India is now here.
We are very honored and humbled to have her support and the support of the NAS Foundation for the Queer Liberation March on June 30th in New York.
It's going to be a blast.
It is.
And good news for Don Lemon, too. He got engaged to his partner, Tim Malone. There they are. Funny, this picture come up and some people on Facebook says, is he gay? He came out about, 10 years ago?
That's crazy. His fiancée is a real estate broker, Tim Malone, in New York City.
In Michigan, the State Board of Education quashed a plot to remove references to LGBTQ people, reproductive health, and climate change from the curriculum.
Go ahead.
And in Portland, Oregon, Scott Wayne Smith, 47, pled guilty to second-degree intimidation, a hate crime, for threatening violence against a gay man in August. The victim lives in housing for PWAs, and Smith
makes him an easy target.
Smith lived in the neighborhood and approached him and said, "This is what can get you in trouble with speech." He said, "I'm going to kill all you faggots."
Yeah.
That is a crime. Texas, the anti-LGBT bills continue to move. Better news from New Mexico. They have joined the National Popular Vote Compact. They're now the 15th state to do that.
Oh, great.
Comprising 189 electoral votes. You need 270 to get into it in order to bypass the Electoral College.
Yep.
You still use the Electoral College, but you vote for the winner of the popular vote.
Right.
That's how we're going to get around this.
Right.
Okay.
International news?
Please.
Well, the only thing that got as much publicity as Pete Buttigieg's religious comments this week was the Sultan of Brunei deciding to make us all subject to stoning to death for homosexuality. It has lit up the world with protests and anger.
There was a protest here. We have a picture of a protest at the Dorchester, which is one of the hotels owned but they had 400 people at this protest in London.
And they broke through the police lines. They were not going to be denied.
One of the leaders of the Labor government is saying we should throw them out of the Commonwealth. This is getting serious.
Travel agencies won't book trips to Brunei. Princess Cruises is going to cancel a couple of scheduled stops there on future trips.
The LGBT group in Australia is urging the government to revoke Brunei Airlines' right to land in Australia.
And the Australian airline has stopped employee discounts on Brunei Airlines.
Now,
Deutsche Bank, what a great actor. Deutsche Bank is offended and says its employees can't stay at the Dorchester Collection hotels.
Wow. Now, a group of people, a couple of people went into, guys named Jordan Tannehill and Nick Finnegan, they went into the Dorchester for afternoon tea. And we have a video of what happened there.
In case you haven't heard, there's a boycott of the Dorchester Hotel. In case you haven't heard, there's a boycott of the Dorchester Hotel. On April 3rd, the Sultan of Brunei announced a stoning by death with the new punishment of homosexuality and adultery. We do not condone the brutality of our LGBT sisters and brothers in Brunei. The Brunei Investment Agency owns and operates the Dorchester Hotel. Please support the boycott of the Dorchester Hotel. You do not support the brutality and solidarity with our sisters in Brunei. Support the boycott of the Dorchester Hotel. We do not condone the brutality of our brothers and sisters in Brunei. We stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters. Boycott the Dorchester Hotel. Boycott the Dorchester Hotel. Boycott the Dorchester Hotel. Boycott the Dorchester Hotel. We stand in solidarity with our LGBT brothers and sisters in Brunei. Boycott the Dorchester Hotel.
They did not get arrested.
We do not
Come
condone
back
the
here.
brutality of our brothers and sisters.
Well, yeah, they did not get arrested, that I could see. They got out of the hotel. Somebody said it looked like Betsy DeVos sitting there on the having tea. I don't think it was, but wouldn't bother her. But I mean, you know, activism is about often afflicting the comfortable, and
A police group has just canceled an event at a Brunei-owned hotel.
Well, let's see what else.
Billie Jean King, Ellen DeGeneres have joined the call for boycotting the
Some
hotels.
of our friends in Florida have figured out that Piper, aircraft is connected to Brunei, and they're fighting it now. But did you read about Omar Sharif Jr.?
No.
Oh man. The gay grandson?
Probably.
He challenged the Sultan to execute the Sultan's son, Prince Azim, who was widely reported to be gay.
Oh my
Wait a
God.
minute. Sharif said he would volunteer himself to be the second executed if the son is first, and that the Sultan himself cast the first stone and the last stones. By the way, Azim's brother, another prince, Jeffrey, is known as the Playboy Sultan, drinking, committing adultery.
Jeffrey?
Jeffri.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
Jeffrey, I don't know.
Just doesn't sound like a Bruneian name.
The United Kingdom suspended a health and safety project in Brunei.
Protests in Thailand at the Brunei embassy.
The UK military is pressuring the Queen, who was very close to the Sultan, by the way, because he's part of the Commonwealth, to revoke honorary titles given to it. The military is asking for this. And there was a Brisbane rally. London Transport has pulled ads for Brunei Airlines.
Maybe the world has changed. Maybe it is easier than
And there
I
are
thought.
other countries that have very bad laws about this. There are 70 that have penalties. Some of them about 5 of them have the death penalty.
All right. Well.
All right, on with the show.
All right. In Peru, a court has ordered recognition of a Peruvian couple married in Miami. And in the Cayman Islands, where we've been following the legalization of marriage there, the lesbian couple that won the court case are scheduled to be married this week, but the government has decided to appeal the ruling and may try to bar them from getting married. You'll know that more than we do by the time you see this, but that's on the cusp this week.
So you all saw about the Israeli elections, and in the run-up to the election, Netanyahu, he mostly tried to beef up his standing by doing very right-wing things, but he also had his first meeting in 10 years with gay activists.
Just before the election to try to get every last vote.
Delivered nothing. And
Well, what he said was, the right wing won't let me help you, but after the election, of course, the whole way he's going to be in office is because neither he nor his opponent got a majority of the seats, and they each have to make a coalition with their allies, and Netanyahu's allies are all these right-wing parties. And the price of him being in office is that he stand up for the right-wing parties.
Real LGBT activists said his party gives cover to homophobes, and there's been a 54% jump in anti-LGBTQ attacks in the last year.
Nonetheless, 5 LGBT people have been elected to the Knesset, 1 from Netanyahu's party and the rest from more liberal parties.
1 from Labor and 3 from the new party, which is the blue and white. In the Czech Republic...
Wait a minute, we're not finished with Israel.
We are not.
Madonna is going to perform at the Eurovision contest in Tel Aviv.
How is that gay news?
Because Eurovision is gay.
Yes.
And because people are encouraging a boycott of Eurovision because of Israeli treatment of Palestinians. So Madonna performing is controversial.
Some progress in the Czech Republic. The Prime Minister Andrej Babis said publicly that same-sex couples should have the same right to marry. Currently, they can get registered partnerships, but there are conflicting proposals in Parliament. They expect that to be resolved within the next month.
And one activist
several months.
Gave credit to Martina Navratilova for having started all this. In the Vatican, more even tinier baby steps. A leader of the Vatican met with 50 mostly European LGBT leaders. The Pope was supposed to show up and did not. And they were supposed to...
They met with the Secretary of State, Cardinal Pietro Parolin.
And there was a planned statement condemning discrimination, and that didn't happen either.
No, Parolin after the meeting just repeated the bromides that we are defenders of every person's dignity and we're against every form of violence. But how about stopping what the church does in terms of violence against us? The condemnations cause suicides among young people.
Of course.
Vulnerable young people trying to figure out who they are.
Yes. And you wonder why people don't come out.
So that's violence. That is a form of violence.
You bet it is.
Especially when you know better, and especially when 80% of you in the Vatican are enjoying homosexual sex.
Exactly.
And that's not an exaggeration.
Undercount. So in Fiji, the Prime Minister said, we will never have same-sex marriage here.
Wait a minute. It's in the Constitution that sexual orientation is protected.
You're blowing my line. Yes, activists brought quite a backlash and said we have non-discrimination for sexual orientation and gender identity in our Constitution. How dare you say there will never be same-sex marriage? So the fight continues in Fiji.
Well, it certainly helped in South Africa to have it in the Constitution, and that led to same-sex marriage.
In Toronto, the people who are the organizers of the main Pride March are going to take a vote on throwing corporate floats out of the parade.
Wow.
They suspect that if this passes, and it's given a good chance of passing, it will not go into effect for this year, but will for next year and subsequent years. And that is a delightful turn of events.
Tasmania, which used to be a backwater when it came to our rights, is poised to pass the best laws for trans and gender diverse people anywhere in the world, allowing to self-determination of gender identity and recognition on birth certificates, allowing the choice to take gender entirely off a birth certificate, or letting parents do that when you're born, say, no, don't put down a gender. And it also protects trans people from hate speech.
Worst to first.
Yeah.
Tasmania used to be the most conservative part of Australia, and they have leapfrogged ahead.
Now, Polish politicians are apparently discovering anti-gay bigotry big time this year in their political atmosphere. And one of the cities there, Gniezno,
Gniezno.
Well, the president of the city, they call the person the president, banned a pride parade that had been set for April 13th. It's being appealed, so maybe it's going to go forward because it's a violation of the Polish Constitution and a violation of the European Court of Human Rights. 20 cities in Poland do have pride parades.
AIDS news. Well, we told you a few weeks ago about Gilead's drug Descovy, which is an alternative to Truvada for use as PrEP. and it has fewer side effects, particularly with bones and kidneys. Well, Gilead now has submitted it to the FDA as an official alternative to Truvada. Could this have anything to do with A, the bad publicity about the pricing of Truvada, and B, the fact that Truvada's patent is running out in about 18 months on Truvada overall, I think.
They always find a way to bilk us.
Yeah.
In the United Kingdom, 40% of gay men with new hepatitis C infections are HIV negative. And before this, almost all the hep C infections were seen almost exclusively in HIV positive gay men. So another worrying trend.
We better get to entertainment news if we're going to run any
What does the Constitution mean to you?
After seeing the show, not much.
New show by Heidi Schreck. It's gotten rave reviews, with standing ovations and everything. And it's, she's a woman who used to do contests about what the Constitution meant to her when she was a teenager. And I thought, as you turned to me and said, she won for this speech.
Yeah.
But it does get serious. She really brings in some very serious issues.
But I wouldn't recommend
it. No.
But and we haven't seen this movie that's about to be released next week. Actually, the end of this week, Wild Nights with Emily. Molly Shannon as Emily Dickinson, but it looks so charming that we're going to show you the trailer.
They called her the myth. Too much has been made of late of Emily Dickinson's famous reclusivity.
Hello.
Let me tell the real story about this special poet. When Emily was a young girl, Emily did have a fondness for the daughter of a tavern keeper, Susan.
Susan is to be married.
I care for your brother, but my heart belongs only to you.
I missed you. Susan, you have to be careful. You are the one who writes the poems, puts it in ink.
Every poet has a muse. These are for you.
1 cup flour, add milk.
It's on the other side.
Emily Dickinson wished to be published, but she failed to make a good impression.
Various limbs of your poems need removal. And these dashes, are they really necessary? Do you see how it is improved?
He doesn't think I'm ready.
It's because you're a woman.
No man would want to marry a woman more clever than he, Jane.
Emily.
Your poems, they're full of things that are startling.
Why don't more people feel as you do then?
She had no idea of the recognition after death in the literary world.
Wild nights were I with thee. Wild nights should be our luxury.
It's beautiful, no?
It looks cute.
It reminds me of The Favorite almost in terms of its wackiness and fun.
Or Tom Jones.
I've been to her grave up there in Amherst.
And the movie we were raving about a year or so ago, Rafiki, the Kenyan movie, lesbian movie, fabulous movie, won awards at Cannes and the Gay Film Festival here, is going into release here next week at the Quad on the 19th. And widely, and there'll be a Q&A with the director that night.
We'll tell you more about Tales of the City, which is bowing on Netflix on June 7th. Congratulations to Kinky Boots, 2,505 performances, 6-year run on Broadway. Harvey Fierstein, Cyndi Lauper.
Coming up also in June, the new season of Pose on June 9th, and June 14th through 27th, Paris is Burning has been restored and revived and will be at the Film Forum.
And at the British Tony Awards, the Oliviers, The Inheritance, the big 2-part gay play, won Best Play and a bunch of other awards.
And I saw a documentary, if you're a fan of Thelma and Louise, it's called Catching Sight of Thelma and Louise, now playing in New York. Interesting about feminism, if you're interested.